and welcome to the Adelaide Edible Garden Trail 2021. We're here at Wagtail Urban Farm, a micro-scale urban garden here in Adelaide. We've got Stephen Hoffner here, the co-founder.
Hi, and welcome.
Let's go take a look. Right, so here we are inside your little farm. It's pretty small, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably half a suburban house block. It's 230 square metres and we use 180 square metres for cultivation.
Yeah, wow. So what have you actually got growing here?
At the moment, not much because it's in that change of seasons. We do have our perennial kale, the sea kale, heaps of asparagus. There's a few fruit trees. This is a strawberry guava and it's fruiting quite heavily at the moment.
Yum.
Lots of corn. It's just the end of the corn. This was all planted in corn. There was like a whole forest up until recently. Rhubarb, and then a few other things, hops and a few other sort of fun things in here.
And this is not really for your own personal consumption, right? What are you growing all of this food for?
Yeah, so we service a market. Up until COVID, it was a community market. Since then, we've swapped to more local online stuff. We do grow a lot of our own food, but that doesn't pay the bills. So we have to grow enough to be able to pay the water bill.
So would you say that's how this is different to maybe like a backyard grower, that you're trying to sell things for sale?
Yeah, I guess, backyard growers eating hopefully the majority or swapping with neighbours, whereas we're trying to raise money to pay the water bill and improve the amenities here and push our education agenda.
So you have volunteers that help out?
Yeah, on average 2 or 3 a week. Sometimes we get larger groups that come in. We'll do a workshop here or spend the day here learning and taking home some of that knowledge, and they'll help out as well. Sometimes it's just me by myself, which is actually quite lovely.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, and we've got bananas growing in the corner here.
So tell me about these bananas.
Yeah, so we planted them about 3 years ago. Not expecting much, just knowing that this is a sun trap. So it doesn't get the cold southwesterly winds and it retains a lot of the warmth of the day.
Yeah.
And they're doing so well. We harvested 2 bunches last year, and if you have a look, there's 4 more coming on this year.
That's so cool. Because you
surprised
wouldn't think that you could grow bananas in Adelaide.
But they're thriving.
Yeah, wow. So what on earth is the secret to your productivity here?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things. I always put myself into the mindset of the plant and think, if I was a plant, what would I want? And so we've got a lot of sunlight. There's no trees blocking the solar access here. So we get, 12 to 14 hours a day of sunlight.
Wow.
Plants, obviously need the sun to power themselves. We use something like this, which is a broad fork, and we use this to soften the soil every time we plant, because you have to imagine the plant's roots need that nice soft soil to get through to access the nutrients and for water to penetrate through. Usually I'd move the irrigation out of the way, but in essence, and you can do this with a garden fork. This just happens to be the width of the beds. You just want to sort of pull the soil back so that it pops up a little bit and it sort of aerates the soil. So that's one thing. The other is fertiliser and compost. I can show you that if you want.
Yeah, that would be great, because I think a lot of people think you just use compost or you just use fertiliser, right?
Compost isn't fertiliser, and fertiliser in an organic system isn't accessible unless there's humus in the soil, so that's why you need compost.
Yeah, right. It's the combo that's critical.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you just talk us through your bed structure here as well? Because they're a certain width. This is all part of growing a lot of food in a small space, isn't it?
Absolutely. A farmer called Elliot Coleman worked it out. The most efficient space is 1 metre wide. So you've got a path that's 30 centimetres and a bed that's 70 centimetres. You get a lot of productivity. You can get, usually 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 plants in that width.
Wow.
And then you can get access, but you can also straddle the bed. So when you're harvesting and planting, you can comfortably work it.
The beds here, they're running north to south, is that right? Yeah,
I mean, you see it when you go through agricultural areas. They always tend to run north-south because that way you get a spread of sunlight from the morning to the afternoon. If you run them east-west, you can get a crop that will shade out a crop next to it in the bed, so north-south is preferable.
So even if you've got like a tiny veggie patch in your back garden and you're just growing like herbs and a bit of kale, that's an idea to keep in mind if you can?
Definitely, if you can. I mean, we all have to make compromises, but ideally that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, right. So it seems like one of the things you've really nailed here is feeding the soil to feed the plants, and that's something that a lot of new gardeners, we don't get that very right. Do you want to talk us through what you actually are doing to grow such massive amounts on a small space?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, it is an intensive cropping system, so we have to feed it intensely. I make my own fertiliser up. It's got ground up chicken feathers, bone meal and canola seed meal.
Wow, sounds delicious.
The plants love it. I call it COF, Complete Organic Fertiliser. That's it. It's a powder. It goes on very easily, and then you add the compost and mix it through.
And at what point would you add that? When would you be adding that to your beds?
Every time I prepare a bed for planting.
Okay.
And that doesn't matter if it's the whole bed, 13 metres of it, or just 1 square metre.
Yeah,
I'll
right.
always add more fertiliser and compost whenever I'm putting a new plant in.
Okay, cool. And what else do you add?
So we've got clay soil here. It's quite heavy clay once you get down to about 2 feet deep. So I add gypsum every time I plant. We had our soil tested. We had tested both for heavy metals, but also for nutrient availability. And that test told us that there is a lack of iron in the soil, so that's why we use chelated iron just a little bit every time we plant, just to replenish that. And B, that the clay is quite heavy, which stops the plant's roots from being able to access nutrient. And so we add gypsum every time we plant. Again, just a little bit, over time, little bits every time you plant works through the soil and opens up the soil.
Okay.
Keeps it nice and fluffy like you can see.
So if someone's got a newish bed and they have no idea what kind of soil they have or what they should add to it, what's the easiest way to figure that out?
Yeah, so there's a test called the jar test, where you get some of your soil, put it in your jar, fill it with water, shake it, and then leave it, sometimes for days, to see how the different layers of sand, silt, clay and organic matter settle out. But there's information online if you want to do that. Just look up the clay jar test or the jar test.
Yeah, cool. And that will show you what kind of soil profile you've got. I
Yeah,
guess.
it's a great beginner way of doing it. If you want to go a step further, then I definitely recommend contacting a soil laboratory, and they'll analyse the soil and tell you exactly what the makeup is.
Yeah, cool.
Takes the guesswork out, it's so much easier. So this is one of my favourite features of the farm. I wanted a worm farm here for a long time, because when we'd bring crop in and process it, there'd all be all this debris left, and I always look at it and think, oh, this is fine, it's just perfect for worms. So I got a bathtub, built a frame, and if you have a look, this is just a screen door.
Yeah.
Really simple. Some timber over the top helps to modulate the temperature and
that's a good
the
idea.
humidity. Bit of hessian, and then we put all of these scraps and things in here.
So this is all your fine stuff, things like you've got a compost bin as well, but you put the finer stuff in here? Is
Absolutely,
that?
yeah, and the worms love it when it's like that. And you can see there's hundreds of thousands of worms in here. This stuff, this humus that they make, is amazing for the garden. Any plant that needs to pick up, seedlings especially, but the most valuable ingredient, I guess, that we get out of it is the worm juice, which then we put onto the garden. Anything that's perennial that we can't fertilise all the time gets the worm juice.
Right, okay. So you do that, even weekly?
Yeah, absolutely. Every week, empty it. Keeps the mozzies down too.
So you're actually only here on the farm one day a week, Thursdays, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So how on earth do you keep this all going and make sure things don't die?
I've got a little helper in the corner. We've got an irrigation box, 3 solenoids, and so this irrigation comes on once every 3 days for 90 minutes, and that's enough to keep everything perfectly watered.
All year round, summer, winter? Do you
Yeah,
change
so in winter I can reduce, with the controller, I can reduce the amount of water, and in the middle of winter I don't actually have it on at all. So.
Oh, okay, right. And it just keeps it going even through those really hot days. You don't even have to think about it.
Yep, absolutely.
And no plant death, mainly?
This year the irrigation controller failed for 2 weeks, and we had a few deaths of seedlings. So it tells me that there's actually quite a lot of moisture stored underground too.
Wow, that's amazing. No shade, and everything lived.
And no mulch.
Yeah, right. You don't mulch?
We don't mulch mainly because of the crop spacing that we use. We plant things very close together, and once they get established, they actually shade themselves.
So this bed here that's exposed, this is in a period of transition?
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to plant garlic in this later on today.
Oh, cool. Okay, so it won't be bare for very long, like
No.
a week or two would be your max?
Usually it's the same day.
So you grow totally organically
Yep.
here.
Yep, we
How
don't use
on
any
earth do you
chemicals.
manage pests?
Yeah, a lot of people ask that. Actually, one of the ways is with this plant here. This plant is probably one of the most important ones. So it's called ruby saltbush, Enchyliana tomentosa. Creates these little berries, really rich in vitamin C. They're actually delicious. Try one. But most importantly to me, so the South Australian Research and Development Institute studied this plant amongst others, but found that this one harbours predatory wasps, these tiny little wasps. They're not dangerous to us.
Natives?
Yep, absolutely.
Cool.
And they fly into the garden and they'll find any grub or caterpillar and they'll lay its eggs on it, and then they hatch and eat the caterpillar. So you actually just find these like mummy carcasses of caterpillars instead of your crop that's been decimated by caterpillars.
Wow,
Yeah,
amazing.
it's really
and
good.
literally all you need to do is grow this. It's perennial.
Yep, just around the perimeter of your garden. And so the other thing I've done is I've planted things like the elder. You know, it gives tree cover for small birds. They come in, they can hide in there from their predators, but then they can fly into the garden and get the bugs and flying insects. And also grasses, shrubs, these rushes. This creates habitat for lizards. You know, in the wintertime, frogs maybe even can live in here.
Right.
And so they're all doing that nighttime patrol or daytime patrol for bugs in the garden. And it works really well. It's a natural system.
Yeah, all on the street verge here.
Yeah,
So kind of expanding your space.
why not?
Yeah, clever.
I'll look after it.
Well, thanks so much, Stephen. That has been so interesting, super informative. I think I've learnt a lot.
Yeah, pleasure. And I mean, the main focus of Wagtail is really to educate. So, you know, any opportunity you have like this is great for us.
Yeah, great. So people can come down and contact you for volunteering if
I
they
always
want
say,
to.
if the gate's open, which it is on a Thursday, you're more than welcome to come in.